Kristen, and you're listening to Podcast and Amplify, a podcast for women entrepreneurs who want to amplify their voice and brand through podcasting and grow a wildly successful business. I'm the executive producer and host of 2 shows and an entrepreneur, and I love helping women grow their visibility, mindset, and business to the next level. Each week, I share tips on how to launch and leverage your podcast, and I'm bringing on the very best business leaders to give you advice on how to build your business empire. Let's amplify your voice and business. I want to talk to you today about how to be a great podcast interviewer. Now, I love interviewing people. And so this is a really fun topic for me to share with you. So interviewing is really just a conversation around a specific topic or experience. So a lot of us think, oh, I'm an interviewer and there's a little bit of added pressure, but it's really just a conversation that you're prepared for. And it actually makes it a little easier because you know what you're talking about. It's a specific thing. And they know what they're talking about. They are the expert, and that's why you're talking with them. So that kind of takes the pressure off. As the interviewer, it's really your job to guide the conversation. That's something that I had to learn. I am a natural listener, so I had to make sure that I was guiding the conversation and moving it along in the direction that it needed to go. Now, you also, as the interviewer, are responsible for bringing out the best in your guest. You want to make sure that your questions highlight their knowledge, give them an opportunity to share what they know or are passionate about. But if you're just starting out, this role can feel kind of like a big responsibility. But fortunately, being a great interviewer is a skill that can be learned. It can be practiced and you get better over time. I can attest to that. So I've honed my interview skills by listening to other great interviewers and through practice. And so I've gathered my best tips and my techniques for having these really great conversations with my guests, and I'm sharing them with you today. So these are 8 tips that I have for being a great interviewer. And if you do these things, you will be well on your way to having amazing, impactful conversations. So let's dive into the first one. So you as the interviewer want to always be curious. So in my opinion, curiosity is the number one trait for being a good interviewer. When you have a genuine interest in learning more about someone or about a topic, it translates to the interview, and it really translates when you're writing questions. And so when your focus is really about learning and taking your listeners on that journey of discovery with you, you'll be able to let your guests shine, and then everyone benefits. You're learning, your listeners learning, and your guest is imparting their story, expertise, passion, whatever it is. Another tip is setting an intention. So this is something that I am borrowing from the master of all interviewers, Miss Oprah Winfrey. Before she starts each interview, she asks her guests what their intention is for the interview. And she does this because it helps her gain clarity on what a successful conversation looks like for her guests and what they hope to impart, so that she knows what success looks like for them. And when they feel successful, she feels successful, and it's this like win-win. So setting an intention for yourself is also important. That will help you show up to the interview in a way that is in alignment with your goals. If you have your intention and the other person has their intention and you've talked about it, it just sets you up for having a better, more successful outcome that everyone is happy with. Questions to ask yourself are, do you want to understand your guest's perspective? Are you asking them to provide your listener with tips or advice? Are they promoting something that you think will resonate with your audience? These are all things that your guest might have in their mind that they want to be an outcome, and it's important for you to ask the question. Okay, so an interviewer, great interviewer, I should say, you always want to be prepared. So researching potential guests isn't only a must, but it can also get those creative juices flowing. So for me, I learned so much just by doing a Google search or reading my guest blog posts or watching their past interviews or looking at their social posts. That is really where the questions really just write themselves by learning about this person and doing my research and figuring out what is their secret sauce, like what do they love to talk about, and tapping into that. So also, the more you know about your guest as a person beyond what they specialize in, the easier it will be to see those other places where you can connect with them. So being prepared is not only respectful of your guest's time, but it will also make you feel more confident, and then your guests will feel like they're in good hands. Okay, this one is a little obvious, but as an interviewer, you want to ask great questions. So besides the actual interview, writing questions is, like I said, my favorite part about podcasting. Maybe I didn't say that. I know I've said it in past podcasts, but this is where researching your topic and guests is really going to help you write questions that will lead to those really compelling conversations. So you can write your questions in bullet point format, and that really makes it easy to like scan them as you're interviewing your guest. And then you can also still engage with them while you're scanning this list. Sending them questions beforehand gives your guest time to prepare for the interview, which I highly recommend. Do not send the questions an hour before. That is not fair to your guest. Most people don't like winging it, and it's just respectful to give them at least a few days. They are the expert of their topic, but everyone needs a little bit of prep time. And you might be asking questions that they've never been asked before, or in a way that they've never had to think about what they know before. So ask great questions and send them those questions. I let my guests know, I think about a week before, if possible. And I also let them know that that list of questions is pretty much going to be the flow of the conversation, but I may ask them one or two questions like on the fly as we're having a conversation, which I think is totally okay, because sometimes you discover things while talking to someone that just opens up questions. And I think that's totally fine. Shouldn't throw them off too much. And leaving room to go off script a little bit, it will just create a more natural conversation between you and your guest. Hey friends, we'll get back to the show in just a moment, but I wanted to let you know about the VIP intensive I offer once a month for the busy entrepreneur who wants to start a podcast. So if you know you have something to say that will inspire others, you want to reach new audiences, show up in a bigger way, and make more money, I want to invite you to join me inside my VIP one-day guided workshop, where I'll walk you through creating all the elements of your fabulous podcast. You'll even write your first script and record your very first episode. So if you want accountability, guidance, and dedicated time to start your podcast, go to exploreinu.com to sign up. Okay, my friend, back to the show. Okay, so you always want to think about your listeners. So I always have my listeners in mind when I'm booking my guests, when I'm writing questions. I have in my head, like, what value am I offering them? What will they want to know? What will help them with their problem in their business, in their life? And really, by putting myself in my audience's shoes, I'm able to get answers to questions that they are most likely curious about. So as an interviewer, I'm really there to help provide value to my listeners and know what types of things they will want me to ask. Okay, so now we want to make sure as well that we are being open and relaxed as the interviewer. Some guests, they'll just breeze through an interview. but others may not have the same level of experience interviewing, or they might not have that confidence. So the more relaxed and confident you are and bring that energy to the interview, the more likely your guests will open up and the better the experience will be just for everyone involved. So I know it can be hard when you're first starting out and feeling nervous, but it's really helpful to view interviews just as conversations. And in the back of your mind that you can always go back and fix your mistakes in post-production. And that takes some of the pressure off so that you can be open and relaxed. Okay, so as an interview, this might be number one importance besides curiosity, being a good listener. So being a great interviewer is really about being a good active listener. Your job is to listen attentively so that you can guide the conversation, so that you can pick up on nuances, and so that you can hold space for your guests. So here are a few ways to be an active listener. First, don't interrupt or talk over your guests. Paraphrase what your guest says. Use nonverbal cues like nodding or leaning in so they know that you are hearing them and understanding them, like you're with them, you guys are doing this together. Acknowledge with verbal affirmations like, I see, or that makes sense. Invite them to tell you more. Be curious. Again, that goes back to curiosity. And then ask follow-up questions. That way they know that you're listening to them. And if you have your listener in mind, like we talked about before, you'll know to ask the questions that maybe your listener might have had listening to the show that your guest didn't address. Okay, the last tip is be flexible. Interviews, they can sometimes go to unexpected places. Diversions may mean that they'll have to salvage the conversation, or maybe you can create an even better show than you had envisioned. But either way, your ability to pivot and adjust on the fly is super critical, because technical issues during the interview or last minute scheduling issues, they will definitely come up. So the more you can roll with those hiccups, the easier it will be for everyone. Sometimes you really just have to take a deep breath, accept the situation, and try again on a different day or time. So these technical issues can look like their internet not being strong or not working, your internet not working. Maybe they have a crappy microphone, or they have noise going on in the background that they just can't get away from. And scheduling issues. I went through a period where I had a few guests in a row just completely forget that we were supposed to interview. And it was just a couple, but it was kind of like, what's going on? But they were both so apologetic and gracious, and it really was a complete mistake, accident, that they didn't see it on their calendar and were just lovely about it. And so we rescheduled, but definitely don't take those things personally. People are busy. The more grace you can give others, because at the end of the day, most people feel horrible that they've flaked on you, the better the outcome. And so I've just rescheduled, and I had great, fantastic interviews. So those things will come up, and you just got to roll with them. Being a great interview at the end of the day comes through experience, but if you commit to incorporating all of these tips, you are going to be well on your way to becoming the fabulous interview that you want to, and I know that you can be, and you will have some fantastic conversations. So thank you again for joining me. I hope you got a lot out of this episode, and we'll see you next time. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe so you don't miss a show. And rating and reviewing this podcast is the best way to help support us. Always remember, your voice and what you have to offer is needed in the world. Until next week, take care.